I have just spent 10 days at a silent meditation retreat, which means I now have to jumpstart my van. So for the first time, I finally got to test my new Jumpstarter battery pack. And it worked like a charm. Hallelujah! Of course, the moment people saw a girl standing there with the bonnet open, they just had to walk into the frame, didn't they? They were actually quite impressed by my Jumpstarter too.
We don't need nobody.
No, what? Me, myself.
Today I thought I will talk about 4 things I wish I knew before my very first Vipassana course, which could be very helpful to anyone thinking about doing one. And if you clicked on this video and you have no idea what these courses are, let me introduce it quickly. There are 10-day silent meditation retreats where you meditate 10 hours a day, and during these days you are not allowed to talk, write, read. You shouldn't even make an eye contact with fellow students. Your phone gets taken away, so there is no internet. Your whole job is just to meditate. You get accommodation, you get food. And that's it. And if you are thinking now, why would anyone sign up for this? I was exactly the same. The first time my friend told me about this, I was totally horrified. But a seed had been planted and science just kept coming back to me. One day I read Miracles from the Abyss by Martha van der Lust. I originally picked it up because of her time in India teaching yoga and then later in South America working with ayahuasca. But she also mentioned doing Vipassana once in India. And again, I was totally horrified. Then one day during the pandemic, I didn't have a job and I was a little bit bored. And I thought to myself, well, happiness is on the other side of fear. And since I'm really scared of Vipassana, there could be some really great happiness on the other side. And at that time, I was also reading this book. It could be translated as I was in hell and found paradise within me by Maxim Klasanovic. There is no mention of Vipassana in this book. It's actually about his more than 8 years spent in Thailand prison. And my jaw just hit the floor reading about the conditions people are kept in these prisons. And I would surely not last more than 3 days. But he was fortunate enough that one of his many cellmates was a Nepalese. And at first, Maxim felt sorry for him because he would wake up early in the morning and the Nepalese would just be sitting there and Maxim would be thinking like, oh, poor guy, he cannot sleep. But then when they got talking, the Nepalese actually explained to Maxim that what he is doing is meditating, and he taught Maxim how to meditate, and that was his escape. He was meditating ever since, and it made his stay in the prison much, much more comfortable. And I would honestly say that meditation probably has saved his life in a place where people were losing their lives on a daily basis. And so I got really curious again, where do these people go? You have heard the stories about monks and yogis meditating in a cave for months or even years, and all they tell us is just watch your breath, which, I'm sorry, but that sounds boring as hell. Like, how can anyone do it for so long? And that was the time when I booked my first Vipassana course. Since then, I have completed 2 10-day retreats in New Zealand, one as a student and one as a volunteer female manager. That center was really lovely. Students had their own rooms, it was very quiet, and overall it felt like a great place for a first experience. You can check them out on Dharma.org. They have many centers all around the world and they teach in the tradition of SN Goenka. The courses are essentially free, but if you can, you are invited to leave a donation at the end. Here in Perth, I decided to try the International Meditation Center. They have only about 6 full centers around the world, so they are much smaller. 2 of these centers are here in Australia, so that was a sign for me to go and check it out. And they teach in the tradition of Sayaji Ubakin, who was actually SN Goenka's teacher. Their donation system is a little less optional. They do ask for a certain amount, but it's still cheap, and they will reduce it even further if you are not working. We had a possum living in our roof, which I was sharing dinner with every now and then. And I found this leaf while walking around the grounds, and I thought, wow, what a cute leaf. It has a tail. It looks like a stingray. I thought it must be some anomaly, a very special leaf that somehow grew a tail, and I was ready to cherish it forever. And then I found a whole tree full of them. Not so special after all. Does anyone know what tree this is? Anyway, let's finally get into these 4 things I wish I knew before my very first Vipassana retreat. The first one is the pain. I had a hunch that sitting in the meditation pose will kill my back, but it was even worse in my imagination, and I was daydreaming about this belt that bodybuilders are wearing when they are doing the deadlift. And then I started tying a blanket around my waist as tight as I could to get at least a little bit of relief. But of course, for the next course, I came equipped with a back brace from the pharmacy. Total game changer. I also like to tie a sarong around my waist, not too tightly, and create a little pocket at my belly for my hands. The hands add some weight to the fabric, essentially pulling my lower back forward into a straighter position, and I get a bigger sense of support. I almost feel like I'm leaning on something without actually leaning on anything. I would never go to another retreat without this. I also didn't know there were some meditation aids like a kneeling stool or a backrest. At Goenka Center, I was lucky enough to ask for these. Of course, the supply is limited, so if everybody wanted one, there would not be enough. So if I had the space, I would just get my own. They wouldn't be even hard to make. At IMC, they didn't have any of these aids, but they were a little bit more benevolent. So after 30 or 40 minutes of sitting, when I was sore, I would just go and sit in a chair or lean against the wall, and they were okay with it. But the more experienced students, they knew to bring their own kneeling stools or backrests. When they ask about your experiences with other techniques or healing practices, don't make the same mistake to think that this is your time to shine, that you can score some extra brownie points for having some experience in the spiritual things. I, of course, did brag about my level 2 Angelic Reiki certificate. And they turned around and said, okay, well, you can come to 1 course, but if you would like to do more, you would have to give up Reiki. Vipassana doesn't like being mixed with other techniques, so just keep it simple. Maybe skip that question. I intentionally put this point last because I assume a lot of you will stop watching now because I'm about to talk about veganism. But even if you eat meat, eggs or milk, I think even you will see the cognitive dissonance that's going on in these places. Vipassana comes from a Buddhist tradition, and even though you don't have to have any religious or spiritual beliefs to practice Vipassana, during the course you will be asked to observe a few precepts. The main one, don't unalive sentient beings. That includes slapping a mosquito, a pesky fly, or stepping on a bug. This is why the food they serve is vegetarian, with lots of vegan options. When they ask about your job or hobbies, it's not just to get to know you better, but it's to see whether you do something that would not align with Vipassana. Like, for example, if you like fishing or hunting, does your job involve selling animals or meat? It will get flagged. And so you would have thought that as a vegan, you will be in the right place and they will have respect for vegans and they will be like, good on you that you are trying to cause the least amount of harm. Here, this curry is vegan, you can have that. But no, it doesn't work like that. And it's just really weird because the vegan food is there. And if you are lactose intolerant, they have a lot of respect for that. And at Goenka's, you will get a list of meals for every day where you can clearly see what contains dairy and what doesn't. And that's it. There is no issue with that. But I didn't get that list because I'm not lactose intolerant. I'm just a vegan. So when I went to the assistant teacher after a few days of eating mainly just rice and asked for the list, she reluctantly gave me one, but she told me we should not have to cater for you because for you it's just a choice. And I was just shocked because for me it's as much of a choice as for them it is a choice to not eat meat. It's an ethical choice. And even though they treat me like a big pain in the butt, it's not about me at all. It's about the animals. And I feel like just by requesting a dairy-free meal, they feel maybe judged. Many people still believe that nobody has to lose their life for dairy and eggs, which is not correct. But I'm sure many people have tried to point it out to these Vipassana centers. I have seen the guest book at the center in New Zealand, and few people tried. But it's just they don't want to hear about it. And I'm just thinking, okay, let them eat cheese. It's their karma. It doesn't have to bother me. They are probably also worried that more stricter food rules would drive away students. And at least they don't serve meat. We have to give them that. But what really frustrates me is when vegans are reduced to mere pain in the butt, their reasons are dismissed and they are pressured to conform. And so if you are a vegan, do yourself a favor and say you are lactose intolerant. Yes, I can hear it. Jana, wouldn't you break the precept of not lying? Yes, technically I guess I am breaking the precept of not lying, but only in order to keep the precept of not unaliving sentient beings, and I think that's fair. And so, even though this last point still frustrates me, I want to make one thing really clear. A Vipassana course is still absolutely worth doing. Yes, it can be physically painful. Yes, some of the rules can feel intense. And yes, there might be a few things that surprise or even annoy you. But none of that changes the fact that these 10 days can teach you something incredibly powerful about your own mind. For me, the biggest gift was finally understanding where all those monks, yogis, and even Maxim in that prison cell go. The body is still there, the pain is still there, and yet somehow, through deep meditation, you can reach a place where the body softens into the background. The pain is still technically there, but it no longer owns your entire experience. It's almost like finding a hidden room inside your own mind, a place where discomfort, boredom, fear, and even suffering lose their grip. And that's why, despite everything, I still think Vipassana is absolutely worth trying at least once. If you have done a Vipassana course, please let me know how was it for you, what surprised you the most, and if you are thinking about doing one, let me know what scares you the most. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!